Welcome back to examine the tax ahead of the 10th National Assembly. Let's go live to our Abuja studios, where a professor of political science and international relations at the Nasarawa State University, KEFI, Professor Jideofor Adibe, is joining us to discuss this issue. A pleasure having you with us, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you too.
So, Prof, last year we saw the transition from the 9th to the 10th National Assembly. How would you assess the performance of the federal legislature in 2023?
Well, for people who are looking for a very adversarial relationship with the executive, which I don't think it should really be, they will be disappointed because there was this tendency for, non-robust interrogation of issues. For example, during the screening of the ministers, ministerial nominees, people expected more robust interrogations. And so quickly people concluded that because both the National Assembly and the executive are from the same political parties, that they were more likely going to be just mere rubber stamps. We hope they will not be. But what we're also going to emphasize, for example, is not just, we don't expect them to be very cantankerous and just fighting the executive, but we expect them to be able to reflect more the mood of the people. For example, they should play more role in terms of helping to cut the cost of governance. The issue of SUVs worth 160 million at a time the country is going through, extreme hardship. That did not make for good optics. The issue of quickly, very easily approving loan requests from the government at a point where we were spending 96% of the revenue. In fact, as at the first 6 months of last year, we spent 99% of the revenue just to service debts. And the National Assembly kept, approving. Of course, we know the situation is challenging. And they have been able actually to do quite a lot in terms of turning out a number of legislations and approving the budgets in record time. But we also expect them to do more. In July last year, they came up with a 6-point legislative agenda, the House of Reps. We expect them to look more closely at those agendas they set for themselves and know the areas they need to fine-tune. Some of the issues in the agenda they mentioned were issues of accountability. And in the light of what has been happening, has also, came up in the news. There's more, need to do more. The issue of security, the issue of increasing hardship in the country, they need to revisit their own agenda, the 6-point agenda from the House. And on top of that, I would like them to look more at the issue of mounting, debts. They should discourage the federal executive, executive from, binging on debts. And part of the ways they can do that is to encourage them, to cut the cost of governance and ramp up revenue from other sectors instead of this easy resorts to borrowing. So on overall, it's still relatively new. It's still relatively a new 10th Assembly. They've set an agenda. The country is going through hardship, so it's extremely difficult to give them, high marks when the general society is in hardship.
Now, Professor Adibe, you mentioned something that many people consider the 9th Assembly a rubber stamp legislature. So let's talk more about that. Do you think that the 10th Assembly will make a departure from that tag? Because they said it several times that they will not be a rubber stamp.
Well, let me say that some people believe that the National Assembly is not rubber stamp only when it is very adversarial only when it's seen to be fighting the executive. That is not necessarily so. But they should be able, for example, to be seen to be independent. Independent doesn't necessarily mean there should be no collaboration. I have pointed out the issue of the ease with which it approves loan requests from the government. I was also not happy, for example, some of the excursions, luxurious excursions, like taking over 411 people to the COP28. The huge delegation that went to UNGA, United Nations General Assembly. There are ways the National Assembly can apply pressure on the executive. Of course, they may be doing that discreetly without our knowing. But so far, to the extent that most of the requests from the the executive have been approved, gives the impression of this rubber stamp. And so they need to do more. Needing to do more means being able to, attune themselves more, reflecting the general mood of the country, being seen to checkmate some of the excesses of the executive. That's what people expect, and that will make people believe that they are independent. As I said, being independent does not necessarily mean being adversarial.
Now, you mentioned security, which should be one of the things the 10th National Assembly should be focusing on this year. What other things do you think the federal lawmakers should make priority number one this year?
I would actually like them to prioritize nation building, because if you look at the six-point agenda that they developed in July, there was no room for nation building. And many people will argue that a primary problem we have today is that the nation is, the nation is so divided. We can say that the nation building process seems to have stalled. And for me, unless we get the nation building right, every solution you throw at our multifarious problems quickly becomes part of the problem. So we need to restart the nation building process, especially after the highly contested election, the election which I believe widened the social distance among Nigerians. We saw the weaponization of ethnicity. We saw the mobilization of primordial sentiments. We saw people came to believe that Nigeria has never been so divided. So, and what is this nation building? It is simply the deliberate use of state instruments to will together people, the constituent parts of the country. And the government the National Assembly, they need to go back to some of those strategies that were evolved in the past, like the NYSC scheme, and try to add and update some of them, because we can say that the process of de-Nigerianization, that is a number of people losing faith in the Nigeria process, is accelerating. And we need to make more Nigerians have faith in the Nigeria project. If we don't get that, every other problem, every solution you try to throw at our problems become quickly part of the problems.
Professor Jide Ofor Adibe, a pleasure sharing your thoughts with us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much.